Greetings, true believers. Welcome back in. I am Ed Berliner, and this is the free for all. Well, okay, for this week, it's going to be the three for all, actually, because one of our folks couldn't make it this week. See, this is what happens when you do live television, recorded television of any kind. Somebody's got actual work to do. You tell them to go do the work, which is always important. Joey Johnston will not be joining us today, but that's okay. That's okay. See, we're covered. We're pros. We can handle this. We adapt. It's easy. Let's go ahead and bring the guys in and get started. First of all, from the center state of Florida, because this is the Talk Sports Network, and we focus on the guys that I know in Florida. My good friend, formerly of the Orlando Sentinel, formerly of the Miami Herald. You were Herald for it was because it was the Herald and not the Sun Sentinel, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I wanted to make sure I get that. Where he now makes sure that everything is safe in the center part of the state. It is a pleasure always to welcome George Diaz onto the show. And then from the northern part of the state, where he holds court and where, remember, this is the guy who goes to the Pro Football Hall of Fame meetings and who actually has coffee with Shad Khan every morning, as a matter of fact, and they discuss how to run the Jacksonville Jaguars. Always a pleasure to welcome Sam Kovaris into the show. So I guess did I get all that right, Sam? I covered everything to make sure that Shad's happy now this week.
I'm not sure that that's ever going to be the case. I can tell you that I have told them in the past, and I think, and you guys, you probably can talk about the Dolphins or other professional sports leagues. You know, a lot of times professional sports leagues operate in a town, and Jacksonville may be a little unique because it's an expansion franchise, and maybe Miami was like this as well. But when they expanded in the 60s, you know, sometimes they operate like they're aliens who landed here and they just happen to operate here. Even though they contribute a lot of money to local causes and so forth, they don't quite really have the feel of the town. They don't quite grab that, and I've mentioned that to them, and they've just basically told me to get out of their office. So.
Well, what I mean, that's actually a good point where we bring this up because it seems that you're right. We keep talking about what teams do in their certain cities, and sure, they all come up and say our players go to the charitable events and they're part of this event, and what is that? Why is there such a rampant disconnect many times between owners, teams, and the fans and the community? You're right. It's as if we know what we're doing. Shad Khan should know what he's doing in Jacksonville. Stephen Ross should know what he's doing in Miami as well. Folks in Tampa should know, and other franchises. Yet they just don't seem to get it. Why is that?
I think oftentimes, because it's such a small fraternity of owners, 32 of them, I think oftentimes they end up just doing kind of what the league says they should do from a marketing standpoint. And, the league's marketing team is in New York. Well, it's very different to sell pro football to New Yorkers than it is to sell pro football to people who have many, many other options, for instance, in the Sunshine State. I mean, that, there's a little bit of a lack of understanding there. And Jacksonville is a town that's divided by rivers and roads, and no politician has ever really been able to kind of bring everybody together. 30% of the population here is Black, very large Filipino population here. And so you've got to have somebody with real vision who can see the whole encompassing thing of the entire region, rather than just, as I like to say, south of J. Turner Butler and east of 95, which, by the way, is where Ponte Vedra is.
George, it comes down then to other franchises as well, which is good because you're in the market which only has the Orlando Magic and a professional soccer team. And there's always hockey franchises as well and baseball franchises as well. And there always seems to be that rampant disconnect where, again, I think Sam brought it up very well. Owners and the people involved say, shut up, leave us alone. We know what's good for us. Yet they screw it up 9 times out of 10. I mean, is that just wealthy hubris more than anything else?
Well, I think a lot of it is, but also you look at circumstances, and you brought up the Pro Soccer League and the pride and the Lions year. because they have a men's and women's franchise, are actually very engaged in the community. And that comes down to the personal touch. The original founders were Phil Rollins and Kay Rollins. They were a couple. They moved from Austin, Texas, where they had a franchise as well, and started the whole incarnation that led to an MLS franchise. Well, Phil and Kay got divorced under very messy circumstances, and Phil is no longer in the picture at all. But Kay has been a great community ambassador, completely engaged in the community, and the ownership, and now they have new ownership as well. They have new ownership as well, but they've also the owners, whoever the owners are, have let her take that ownership of that piece of the puzzle in terms of community engagement, charitable engagements, and they are very, very present within the community. And frankly, they have the Magic do what they have to do, but I think that there's much more of a organic imprint, if you will, with the MLS franchise.
Well, I'll drop this to you and then bring Sam in as well on this. Is it even important anymore for sports franchises to be tightly bound into the community? And I say that because everybody talks about doing their charitable best and making sure that we spread the wealth. I'm not even sure that's important anymore. I think it's great that they do it. Don't get me wrong, because they've got a tremendous amount of money and time, and they've got athletes, and they've got a way to reach a bigger crowd. But I'm not so sure that the fan base really gives a damn anymore if you go to the charities and you take part in all these events and you do it. I mean, the minuscule return they get on it is to the point where fans don't even think about it. We don't care if you're charitable. Just go out and win games.
Yeah, well, I think that there's a big part of that. I mean, fans do, sometimes I think we overstate the importance of what fans truly care about. And I think you're right. I think the fans care about the bottom line, whether you won on Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday, and not necessarily whether you cut $100,000 check to a kids foundation. That's all nice and fine and dandy, and that happens. But the end game literally is wins and losses. And I think it's interesting from a standpoint. I mentioned Major League Soccer. Well, guess what? They have to chase more people to get more people in those seats than the Magic do.
Well,
So
they got to chase people. They got to
making
convince them to get into the
components to it,
seats.
not just,
You know, they have
excuse
to
me?
do whatever they can. They've got to reach out and reach into any group, any pocket, any corner that they possibly can, because they're desperate to see if they can get people and see if they can get them back in line all the time. So Sam, this comes down to an actual a good idea here. Is it even important anymore for teams to go out and do all these things? I'm not sure.
I do think I think it's important. I'll give the Jaguars credit in that they recognize that they're everybody's second favorite team. In that, and
with the Gators being first.
Live in well, if you moved here, I mean, you had a favorite team before the Jaguars became a franchise. If you live in Boston, you can't be a Panthers fan and then also root for the Bruins. You have to be a Bruins fan. In the state of Florida, there's so many transplants. Everybody's got their favorite teams, and then whatever team's in their hometown is like their second favorite team. That's where I think that a lot of franchises have missed the boat. The Magic, the Heat, certainly the Jaguars. I mean, I don't know about the Bucks or the Dolphins at this point, maybe the Panthers. And that is, like, my son is 31 years old. He should be the biggest Jaguar fan ever because he had no allegiance. He was only 5 years old when the team started playing their games here. And they did not have a concerted marketing campaign for young people like that to bring them up, because he's now at the age where he could buy season tickets. He's kind of a mild Jaguar fan. He follows them. But I think that they didn't develop this generation of fans. My son follows the Colts, and I barely follow the Colts these days because they moved from Baltimore in '84. But that's a whole other story. But it's a marketing thing that I think comes out of New York, comes out of the NFL office. They have a way that they're going to do things. You watch their TV shows. If you go watch the Dolphins show in Miami or the Bucs show in Tampa Bay or the Jaguar show in Jacksonville, they all look the same. It's a formula from the league, as opposed to what works in your town.
Well,
And
it's
I
not
just think that
interesting.
there's a
It's not interesting. Let's get right down to the point here, because you and I, we all come from that era where all these teams do their shows. There used to be on in Miami, it was, I think, Channel 10 used to carry the Dolphin show, and in Jacksonville it was different. It's all the same bull every single week. It doesn't really say anything. It basically carries the party line. The players just spit cliches over and over again. The shows aren't interesting at all. So is it not fair to say that from a franchise standpoint these days, you don't need to focus on Jacksonville, Miami, or Tampa? Because if you've got 10,000 fans coming in from the UK and you've got 50,000 fans who watch you in San Francisco, thanks to social media and OTT programming like this, who cares? I mean, we're involved in the community. If we've got money rolling in and people are buying Jaguars paraphernalia from Dallas, Texas, and from Boise, Idaho, we win.
That's fine. Then don't ask fans. Don't be critical locally of people who don't buy tickets. Then
Okay.
I mean, if that's not where your bread is buttered, so to speak, then don't ask those fans to pony up $4,000 for season tickets to fill your stadium. It's kind of like the Players Championship, which is coming up here in 2 weeks. When Dean Damon moved the PGA Tour headquarters here, they played the golf at Sawgrass Country Club for 4 years. He came here because he was impressed with the volunteer fan base. I mean, they had 1,500 volunteers for the Greater Jacksonville Open, and he also ended up, buying the land and building this, this monument to professional golf here. But without local people buying tickets, the Players does not flourish the way it did. If they didn't continue to market that, and it's funny because when Fincham first came in as the commissioner, he tried, and you guys probably saw this, tried to create this kind of national, international, hey, come to the Players, kind of like Augusta National has. You go to Augusta National, you see people from all over the world for the Masters. But here at the Players, they tried to do this, come in for the Players, and they realized they were cutting off their nose to spite their face here because they weren't marketing to local people who were providing the bulk of the ticket purchases. And so their attendance was down, their interest was down, their local sponsorship was down, and they had to re-engage with Jacksonville and North Florida in order to kind of pump that back up. They've done a better job now of, there was a time, and George, there was a time when you go in the press room and there was a sign up that says the byline is, the date line is Ponte Vedra, not Jacksonville.
Right.
I mean, they didn't want anything to do with Jacksonville.
But are we looking at kind of apples and oranges here? Because if you've got a golf tournament that comes into Jacksonville, Dallas, Miami, Chicago, whatever, you're talking about a 4-day event or 6-day event if you want. There's your one shot to get your money. If we're talking about baseball, football, basketball, hockey, soccer, we're talking about anywhere from 40 to 80 games a year where you're telling people that you've got to come in and plunder your wallet for anywhere from $30 to $300 to get a ticket. So I get that golf tournaments have to do it, and you've got to get down deep because you got one shot. But again, from the big four, let's call it the big, let's call it the big five: baseball, football, basketball, hockey, NASCAR, motorsports. If you come to the stands, great. But most of the money that franchises get these days is not through ticket sales. It is through paraphernalia. It is through pay-per-view. It is through things that you buy outside of the actual event itself. So are we not almost moving to a point where one day, hey, it'll be nice, we've got a 70,000 seat stadium here and it's only got 50,000 people. Who gives a damn? We're still making gobs of profit here because we got people watching us from all over the country. So yeah, if you want to come. If not, we don't care. It seems like that's where we're being shoveled here with cable and with internet broadcasting.
Right. But the owners can maximize. That's where they can maximize their profits. The more tickets they sell, because that money goes right in their pockets.
But can they not put other money in their pockets, straight to their pockets?
Well, I mean, the NFL is a good example. I mean, the amount, and I'm sure everybody realizes this, the entire cost of operating an NFL team is paid for by the television contract.
Right.
So every parking space you sell, every hot dog, every seat license, every suite, is pure gravy. Radio TV contract, pure gravy for the owners. So that's where they're trying to maximize that. They don't really have any cash outlay. That's all paid for. Trips, player salaries, all of it paid for by television money.
George does that. Oh, see, George left right away. He wanted to get out of this. I don't know why. George, you have to come back. It's your turn, my man. It's your turn. But this brings up the next issue here, which is if you're going to have a franchise, Sam, in any sport, you've got to make it entertaining, affordable, and a reason for people to come out to the games anymore. Because, football, you have 8 games, 10 games a year. It's an event. Football and baseball, hockey, and basketball, it's 41 or 82 games out of the 81 games out of the year. How do you make it an event where people still want to come and spend that kind of money? Hey, look, I don't know about you, but I used to have season tickets to a lot of these teams. I gave them up because I can't go to those kind of games and spend that kind of ridiculous money. And when you go to a game, we're branching out, but this is part of the discussion. When you go to a game, and I'm going to bring George in here because he can speak to that smaller market then and also the soccer side of things. But you've got to, even for 2 people or 3 people, you got to budget $200-300 just to walk and go to the game. I mean, that's it. Between parking and tickets and food and beer and everything else, if you're not willing to blow $300 a day, then walk out. You can just stay home. And that's where the money is to me. Stay home. Watch it on cable. Watch it on the internet.
If you're not, I talked to Dan Rooney about this once when they moved from Three Rivers to Heinz Field. He said the biggest problem he had was the reconfiguration of the seats and the people that he was displacing who had sat next to the same people for 40 years at the games, became friends, it became part of their cultural Sunday routine when they went to Steeler games, and that they were being displaced, and they felt like they were, he said, people literally felt like they were breaking up families, although they only saw them 10 times a year. But it was so important. And where that's culturally important, Pittsburgh, now Baltimore, New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, you have to do that. One of the things the Jaguars suffered with is that if you buy a club seat, for instance, which is a fantastic seat and the clubs are beautiful and it's great.
But it's also at a ridiculous investment too. You got to have a lot of money to get a club seat.
Oh, sure. But you never know who's going to be sitting next to you because most of them are bought corporately. They're sending the VP, then next week the CEO wants to go, and then some salespeople are giving it a spiff for clients. I mean, you never know who's going to be there. And that's how you have to build that stadium experience. Because as we know, there's nothing like being there. It's totally different than watching it on TV. And if you're going to have that stadium experience, it can't be a singular thing. You have to feel like you're part of a group, fans, whether it's 55,000 or 5 who are right here next to you every week. That's where I think that's where teams miss the marketing bullseye.
So, George, let's get to the smaller markets here because this is important too, because you still have to create that. And Sam brought up a very good point. People want to go to games. They want to be part of something. There's nothing like going to a game. But you've got to do more than just sell tickets anymore. You have to create an experience now. I mean, some of them go far too overboard with the damn scoreboards and the ridiculous crap that goes on the fields and on the ice and on the court. It gets out of hand. But you're asking someone to say, if you want to bring a date, if you want to bring your kid, if you want to bring that family of 4 that we've all heard about, you better take out a second mortgage on the house, my friend, because that's $300-400 just for one shot to go to one game. But you in that market of Orlando, and talking about soccer, they don't, what's it, $20 for a ticket maybe? It's not that bad. So maybe that's the way to go. But if you cheapen the tickets, then you're not putting enough money in the pockets of the owners. And there's that, you got to kind of hit that middle ground somewhere. You've still got to make it affordable or fans won't want to come to the game. I don't care what it is. George.
You also have issues now, Ed, with the fact that there's just so many. It's obvious, right? You've got the 60-inch high def TV. You've got the in-home experience. You can reach over and grab a cold beer at the fridge and not have to pay $20. at the concession stand and stay in line.
$20.
And deal with
$20. What do you got? The discount beer?
Hey,
20 bucks.
We're fancy here. We have the fancy beer
Wow.
in Orlando, my friend. It's not just the domestic stuff.
No,
We
I was
got
saying 20 bucks.
imported.
I go to watch a hockey game. It's 30 bucks for a beer. Blew me away one day.
So, there's all these other variables that make fans, take a deep breath and say, do I really want to go out there and schlep and deal with traffic and deal with people and deal with high prices? And it's the game day experience is not what it's the game day experience, no matter it has, it fluctuates a little bit. Obviously, there's more technology now in games with the big screens and all that. But frankly, it's tough to compete with the couch in the living room or the man cave or wherever viewing options you have.
I want to take this and go to
Pete
baseball.
Rozelle,
Go ahead.
I
know where you're going.
For years, said the last thing he wanted to have was the NFL become a TV studio league, and the league at least now recognizes that their biggest competitor is an inexpensive flat screen television.
And I'm going to go back to a conversation we had last week. Gambling. It rolls around to it. If you sit at home and watch a game, and I have watched all of the major sports now just to make sure that I'm understanding it and I'm right on this. You're sitting at home. You now have pop-ups for gambling. Who's going to get the most goals in the first period? Who's going to lead the most laps? Go ahead and hit the QR code right now. Dial up right now. You don't get that at the stadium. You want to go to the game, but the gamblers who now are pumping billions of dollars into the pockets of these owners, they're the ones sitting there. So now there's another reason to stay home, because I can sit here and place my bets and I don't have to worry about losing my wireless service out at the stadium somewhere, and I don't have to be worried about anything else. I can do it in the breaks, and they're now telling me that if you stay home, you have a chance to win more money than you would if you go to the stadium. Sam, I don't know how you compete with that, because, again, gambling is now running the show in every major sport as far as the money is concerned. And that's the leagues themselves saying, against what Pete Rozelle said, turning it into that home experience now more than ever before.
Right, which is why one of the most important things that they did at SoFi Stadium, which they spent $4 billion on, was to put enough internet wireless capacity in there so that 70,000 people could be on their phones all at the same time placing their bets. I mean, they advertised that during the game. I know the Jaguar Stadium, they put a lot of emphasis on the bandwidth that was available there. And knowing this was coming, I was kind of amazed. I mean, 20 years ago, I would have never thought this, but I was amazed. I was sitting there at the NFL Honors Show, and one of the awards was Fantasy Player of the Year. Well, at least that shows that the league, and it was Cooper Kupp, at least it shows that the league understands that there's a massive part of their under 40 fan base that's what they're interested in, and that's who's watching NFL Red Zone. And the NFL Red Zone almost seems like one of those, self-cannibalizing things that eventually, that's all anybody's going to watch. It's kind of like the Monday Night Manning cast. I've tweeted and told people at banquets, I have no idea why anybody would watch anything else except that. Why would you watch the regular broadcast when you can sit there just like you do at home with your friends or in a bar, and the game's on, you're kind of watching the game, but you're hearing, guys in this case who are friendly and who also happen to be Super Bowl champion quarterbacks who are excellent communicators, and then their guests sitting there talking about the game. This is the experience that you have when you're sitting in front of the TV. Why would you watch, as good as I think he is, Steve Levy and whomever else, which I guess it's going to be Troy Aikman now, on Monday night, when you got a chance to sit down, drink a beer with Peyton and Eli Manning?
Well, not only that, but you're now taking in, and you brought up Aikman as he changes. You now have Amazon in the game. So you have so many outlets now to watch the games on. If you're a fan of the game, it used to be that, prehistoric days, You get what you were given on CBS and NBC on a Sunday, and you get that one game on ABC on Monday night. Then it was the NFL Network that came along where you had to buy the NFL Network package to see everything. Well, now, if you get Amazon, if you get Hulu, if you get Netflix, if you get Google, if you get ESPN Plus, you now have to choose between all these services to watch all of the games. And if you put that down, if you put that together, if you put 5 services together, let's say, out of giggles, then you're paying what? $100 a month, maybe? 110 to get the games? That's one game in the end. You can now watch everything and stay home. George, there is no reason other than if you just want that visceral being there as part of the crowd to go to a game anymore. And the leagues are telling you, don't come to the game. Well, if you want to, that's okay. But hey, you can make a lot of money if you stay home and you can watch all the games at home. You can't do that in the seats in the stands.
Yeah, well, it's to use in football terminology. I think the NFL has outkicked its coverage in terms of technology. They have made it so much easier now for the fan, for all the reasons that you guys have mentioned and we've talked about, to just sit home and just chill. The fantasy football thing is huge. I mean, do you want to sit there in row 15A or whatever and just be focused on that one game? No, you want to see what's going on. You want the multiple screens. You want the octagon. You want to see what's going on throughout the league, because whether you have $10, $100, or $1,000 riding on fantasy football or whatever, you want to know what's going on, and you want to know whether at the end of the day you're going to be happy or sad when you look at your bank account or whatever from all your various gambling entities.
Yeah,
So the NFL has helped create the monster that now they have to. They're basically in a civil war against themselves. Live audience versus stay-at-home audience, go to the bar, whatever they're doing. But they're not. They're definitely considering options, and a lot better options than for Orlando. Are you going to schlep, go on I-4, get stuck in traffic, take 3 hours to get to Tampa, find a parking
no.
spot? I know I sound like the get off my lawn guy, but that's what happens. I mean, you have to. You at the end of the day, you're sitting there at 10 o'clock, and you say, you know what? Let's just stay home.
Yeah, I'm going to. Here's something else, and I know that the leagues have railed against this. But which league is going to start allowing its players to tweet during the game? Now think about that for a second. Because if you're the fantasy player, whatever, and again, gambling runs the leagues anymore. If you've got the crew chief for Kyle Busch sitting there, or somebody who is live tweeting everything that's happening on strategy, if you've got somebody on the NFL bench who's sitting there.
I've lost you, by the way.
Yeah.
Can you guys
That'll
hear
never
me?
happen.
Well, wait a minute. Hang on. Wait a minute. Why won't that happen? Because if you've got a player sitting there from the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, and they are told to live tweet once or twice, that's something that the fan can't get. The fan can get it in the seats, but then again, they can't connect that to their gambling. And if you start connecting that to the gambling, George, then again,
Yeah, but
it
that's the
becomes
thing.
part of the
That's the thing.
entertainment value.
Well, it's a part of the entertainment value, but at what point? I mean, they're in bed with the gambling industry, but do you want to turn it into to use being in bed? You want to turn it into hardcore porn, because that's what's going to happen if you allow players to start tweeting saying, "Hey, I won't be back. My ankle, my ankle shot. I won't be back." To some extent, the NFL has to have some control of that informational flow, and I think you just can't let it fly and let players tweet whatever, which would have a huge impact on all of these gambling elements that are involved. I just think that that slippery slope is getting pretty damn dangerous if they allow that.
Well,
I don't
okay,
see it happening.
but Sam, are we not already on that slippery slope?
Yeah, and I tell you what, the next money grab for the league, and most fans don't know this. You guys have been in broadcasting and newspapers know this, but since they awarded ESPN a contract, it was the first cable contract that they awarded. They recognized that not everybody in those towns had cables. So they put the game out for bid to local television stations because they wanted to make sure that the game was available for free over-the-air advertiser-supported television for people who didn't have cable. So as we get further into it, and you mentioned Amazon, maybe YouTube TV at some point, As we get further into the streaming services, at some point they're gonna, because we used to bid on the games, we had them a lot, and you had to take the ESPN broadcast and just put it on your air with no adding, no, I couldn't do the play-by-play or anything like that. It was just, you had to take it from beginning to end. And luckily, in most towns, people are going to watch the game on the local station as opposed to watch it on cable.
Sure.
But when the league stops doing that, when they stop making it available over the air, that's why I'm curious with the Amazon contract, which I guess is going to be the Thursday night games. Are they going to make you have an Amazon Prime membership in order to watch it?
I believe so,
make
yes.
it available on a local station. I don't know the answer.
No, but then again, that's just it. It's the way to go ahead and see all these games. And I agree, there's nothing like going to the game. I sit and watch any game, and especially I'm watching the Bruins game, going, holy crap, I want to be there because it's something incredibly special. But at the same breath, I know what it's like in all these different markets. George brought up the point as well. How much do you want to fight I-4, I-95, the LA freeway, whatever else there is to go to a game? I think people are getting to the point where they're going, look, I don't have to go anymore. I can sit and watch the games, and I don't know what the answer is for ticket sales then, but I think I think the slope's already there. And I do think that one of these days they're going to allow a designated player to tweet from the bench or tweet from someplace to go, everybody's good. Boy, look at this. We're having a great game. I get it. I get what George is saying. You can't get into injuries because then that changes everything because everybody is listening. But if a fan is able to have contact with a designated player during the game on a Twitter account, it'll explode. And all you got to do is put a sponsor on it, and the sponsor is going to get 50, 60,000 clicks, and that's going to be worth it. Yes.
It's interesting in Jacksonville, at least. A lot of times you look at the stands when you're sitting in the press box and you're like, where is everybody? But then you look over at this place, they have the Bud Zone, and it's where everybody under 40 is hanging out. They're 10 deep at the bar and 10 deep at the railing watching the game because they're interacting. I mean, if I was 30 and single, that's where I'd be. I mean, that's where all the good-looking girls are. I mean, that's where all the parties are happening. Why would I sit in my seat? So, the expansion of areas like that, and then, like you said, the opportunity to interact on your phone while you're standing there talking with your friends. I mean, that's where the next step is. I mean, you look over, literally, there'll be 15,000 people in the Bud Zone. I mean, and it's a freaking zoo. I mean, I've walked through there before. It's just craziness. Of course, I was the oldest guy in there by about 20 years.
Look, if you're 40, you're the oldest guy in there. But I mean, you've brought up the next step here, and we sort of alluded to that earlier. We're older. There's a generation out there that is mid-teens, 20s, and that's the audience that every sport wants to grab at this point because they've got the money. They're up and coming.
Yeah.
So what then do these sports do? And then sacrificing maybe the older guys, the older women like us, because we know that baseball wants to go after a younger crowd by changing the rules to make it more exciting and make it less time to invest. The NBA wants to go after the younger audiences as well. So what is the next step that these leagues and teams are going to go after that younger audience, and they're going to say, hey, you old guys sitting there, we don't care. Goodbye. We need that. Isn't there going to be a radical sea change here as these sports start to go after the younger audiences, and they basically say goodbye to the older audiences? We don't give a damn because you don't spend that much money anymore. Isn't that going to be the next step? Go after them and give the 20-somethings whatever they want, George, because that's where the money is.
No, we can draw an analogy, and I think you'll see the point very clearly in the media world, especially in print newspapers. That's exactly what's happening. Our generation and a little bit older generation, they don't care about 50, 60, and 70-year-olds. They've already taken that as a loss. They're not going to try to cultivate or hold on to that audience. They're going to chase the younger demographics because that's what everybody's on the cell phone, on their computer, mostly on the cell phone, I suppose. But that's who they want. That is the new consumer. And all these sports leagues, that's exactly what they're going to chase. And because that's how you survive.
Then how do the games change? then how do the games change, the various sports? How are
Well,
they going to change here to go after that audience?
Yeah.
I think there's
Well,
an
change is going
example
to be
of that
hard. I
right
mean, we
away.
talked about
Already in the
baseball.
NFL.
No, go ahead, Sam.
We talked about baseball, and
No, I was
that's
just
the
saying.
intrinsic problem with baseball. It is just a slow ass game. And no matter what they do in terms of trying to speed the game up, it is still a slow ass game. So people are losing interest in the more traditional aspect of baseball, which has always been that way, right? But they don't, our generation embraces that history. The younger generation says we're bored, click off. So these are the challenges. I don't have a lot of answers, to be honest. I do think that what the NFL is doing in terms of bringing in multiple platforms with the fantasy, the gambling, and all that, that's the way to go. But that's a challenge all these sports leagues are going to have to face.
But it is
Is
happening.
that the young,
But it is
yeah,
happening. All of these sports are saying, Ed, George, Sam, we don't need you anymore. We don't. Because if
Yeah.
we don't
no,
get the
And
teens
you
in the
know, if you
20s, you're out.
if you watch the league this year, the NFL in particular, what was the new marketing push this year? It was Nickelodeon, and who was getting slimed, and SpongeBob SquarePants was standing on the sidelines. And if you watch, and they would put all these kids graphics in there, and they're promoting the game on Nickelodeon. And I remember when Josh Allen of Jacksonville was the Nickelodeon Player of the Week. They made a very big deal about him coming in and being slimed, and all this stuff that has a completely different audience attraction, trying to hook those people, kind of like the car companies. They always wanted to hook those people right as a teenager. So you were a Ford guy or a Chevy guy or
Like
a Dodge
cigarettes
guy
and
early
alcohol.
on. Exactly. I was a Winston smoker. I wasn't a Marlboro smoker, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it's the league at least the NFL, and don't be surprised if the NBA and baseball follow suit very quickly. They're trying to infiltrate earlier, and there was a big push this year for the Nickelodeon audience.
See, and getting to baseball now, if we take the 5 major sports, think about it. You have hockey is very fast paced. I mean that moves, and their replay setups are very good, and they take their breaks, they come back. The NBA very fast paced, comes back and forth up and down the court. You're looking at it constantly, and the players are engaged. Football very fast paced to people because it happens bang bang bang, moves along. Soccer very fast paced. NASCAR very fast paced. Baseball is the anomaly here because of the way that the game is played. I think that if there is one of the 5 major sports that is going to continue to falter, it's going to be Major League Baseball, because they can't get past that thinking process that you're slow. You've got to get this down. Hey, instead of 3 strikes, 4 balls, go for 2 strikes, 3 balls. Make it even easier. Make sure that you bring the shift in here. Bring the players in. Put the guy on second base. If you don't make this a 2-hour game, I think baseball's going to die.
They do that, I'm going to stop watching.
But they don't care about you.
Well, I know, but I mean,
or me, or George.
I talked about this last week. Right, baseball has become, and they need to recognize this, a regional sport. The Rays need to be, part of Florida's team. The Marlins need to concentrate on Florida, and then when the playoffs roll around, it becomes a national sport. They need to market to the young people there about the experience of going to a game, and they probably need to market to young parents to take their kids to games for the experience of that, of going to the game. There is something, and a couple friends of mine I had lunch with yesterday, we talked about, when you walk into an NFL stadium, it's like a TV production with 50,000 people there. When you walk into a baseball field, it reveals itself to you, very differently than any other arena. And when young parents aren't taking their kids, like my children aren't taking my grandkids to a baseball game, whether it's a minor league game or a major league game, that's where those people have to be kind of almost indoctrinated into the sport.
Well, but I'll tell you, part of the problem with that is I've gone to
the rhythm of summer.
I've gone to spring training games and major league games, but spring training, of course, is the great place to teach the game, which it's unlike any other sport, baseball spring training. I have seen parents bring their kids in there and they hand the kids the cell phone. And here you have that beautiful day and that sport in front of you that you can teach the kid. And the kids are doing this, and they're on their phone playing games, and the parents don't give a shit. They just let them go on to do it. But that's why I agree with you, Sam, but I think that baseball is facing that sea change right now where they have to make a choice. Either they're going to be traditional or they're going to go after the young. And if they go after the young, they've got to change this game and radicalize this game to where this game is over in 2.5 hours every single night, and it's got to move, or they're going to die.
Nothing gets me quicker than to hear Kevin Costner say, want to have a game of catch, right? Nothing gets me quicker. I don't know that my children have that experience with their children.
But that again is the next step. And George, I think that baseball is looking at a cliff that they are falling off now because thanks to the lockout, and they lose interest. And we talked about this last week. The players don't give a shit. The players don't seem to care about going out there and marketing themselves. They're more interested in how many clicks they get on social media for a stupid picture. I mean, it just doesn't. It seems as if baseball doesn't do something very quickly, they will become the 6th major sport out of the 5 major sports in America.
Oh, there's no question, Ed. And this is all self-inflicted wounds, death by suicide. You mentioned the labor stoppage. There doesn't seem to be any kind of urgency. They're just gonna go plod along, and every day that they don't work this out is another shot to the heart to Major League Baseball, because this is a perfect time for them to capture headlines, and they're capturing all the bad headlines. And we talked about the game and just the nuances of the game and the slow pace. There's also the issue of you want to capture the younger audience, but you don't let the younger players into the game at an appropriate time, or you make them flounder, or obviously develop them on the minor league level. But if you're 18-year-old, you can't.
Well, they're not even doing that. The Major League Baseball right now is cannibalizing the minor leagues. So they don't care about the young talent. That's it. Because I think, again, we're looking at, are the kids now going to just start giving up their last couple of years of eligibility in college and make sure that they go there? Let's take the college kid, screw the minor leagues. We're just spending a tremendous amount of money to do that. So are they not destroying the minor leagues? And that means that, in essence, you're going to destroy the tradition of baseball. And it doesn't look as if, look, I spoke to Jim Kern, who's a former All-Star, and had him on the show, and even he was saying, even the older guys don't care about trying to bring up the younger guys anymore. There's no camaraderie in the game. It's here, take the ball, go out, pitch, shut up and leave me alone, and I'm going into my hotel room later. There is no gathering anymore. It seems as if in other sports, and I'm going to bring up hockey, basketball, football, there is a fraternity that wants to help the younger player get better. I don't see that in baseball anymore.
If you were a baseball manager, could you institute a rule that when you got on the bus or when you got on the plane, no headsets? Could you do that?
No.
I mean, I remember Madden used to.
Now they get fired.
He would have that rule. Yeah, you think so? That there'd be a revolt?
Well, there'd be a revolt, and then the players' union would get involved and say, you can't do that. You can't just arbitrarily tell somebody to do that. You know how that works.
You know, because when you see players, you know, when you see players kind of insulate themselves from each other, you know, and that's one of the mechanisms that they do it with. It just, you know, I mean, I don't know I don't know if Michael Jordan was in the league now, if there would be card games in the back of the airplane. I don't know.
But there's
I know he'd want to play.
We're on a larger issue here, and there's a detachment of the professional athlete these days in just about every sense. They want to be isolated and they want to be protected. They don't want to get involved with fans. And I'll go back to the days of NASCAR, and I'm only going to go back maybe 20 years, where even less, 15 years, where fans could buy a ticket, walk into the paddock area, go through the garage. Hey, you spend a couple of extra bucks, but there were the athletes, there were the drivers, and you could sit and you could shake hands with them, and you could be part of the gang, if you will. You can't do that in any other sport. I see, and again, I'm going to be biased, I guess, but I see hockey players who are giving sticks to fans over the glass. I see them handing pucks to fans. I see them stopping when they're coming off the ice in practice to sign things. I have not seen that in basketball. You don't see that in baseball. Baseball players want stay the frack away from me, the fans. I don't need you. And I don't see football players doing it. It's all that get into the tunnel and walk away. I don't see that expansion to want to be part of fans. But I'm gonna get off my lawn here for a second. I don't know if younger fans give a shit about any of that. I don't think they do.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned NASCAR, and that's interesting because I think that they had the perfect ambassador back in the day with Richard Petty, who was so accessible. I was fortunate to do quite a number of long feature stories on him, and I remember Kyle, his son, saying that they would sit down for supper and they'd have fans knock on his door, and he'd interrupt supper so he could go sign an autograph or take a picture with someone instead of telling them to go get the hell off my lawn, literally.
Yeah, you're showing the
So,
southern
and
roots there because only they call it supper and not dinner. It's good.
yeah, yeah, exactly. They call it supper. So they had the perfect ambassador, and other drivers took the lead on that. Now I haven't covered the sport in a couple of years, but it's not like it used to be.
You can't
Like
get to the
everything.
drivers anymore. You can't.
Yeah, drivers will
Well,
hide in their
I can
motor.
tell you, at Daytona, they made a big mistake. They created this giant fan area, which is fantastic. But then they created this paddock area where the drivers and the cars are behind glass. So you can stand there and press your nose up against it and watch them do whatever they're doing. But there's no interaction. There's no nothing. I mean, and it feels so much more sterile than it used to be. I'll never forget the first time I took my dad, who owned a service station in Baltimore, to a NASCAR, and we walked through the garage area, and they were taking the rear axle off and then putting another one on, and a new differential. And my father was like, "That was a 3-day job. These guys are going to do this in like 20 minutes." I mean, and being able to watch that and literally stand in the garage and watch how these guys work was, I mean, my father's he's an immigrant. He's no NASCAR fan. All of a sudden, he's a massive NASCAR fan. So, that kind of opportunity is gone, and they need to figure out how to recapture that.
I don't think they want to.
And get off my lawn too.
Yeah, I don't think they want to. I don't think the leagues want to. I don't think the athletes want to. The athletes now are insulated because they have their Twitter accounts and they have a public relations rep either for the franchise or the league or for their own personal in NASCAR that is tweeting out things for them, and they're not really doing it. They're not saying any of this at all. And you have NBA players that do the same thing. You have NFL players. Look, Tom Brady, do you think really Tom Brady gets on and tweets and puts social media out there? He has a cadre of PR and marketing people who created for him. So there's no tacit tactile help to get in there and be part of it. But again, I come back to the fact that I think that all the leagues have decided that they want the younger dollar. The younger fan doesn't care about this anymore. What I want my gambling. I want to be able to wager on the games, and I want to be able to sit with my buddies, and I want to go out and hit on girls at the Marlins Den, or I want to go out and hit on guys wherever it is, and that's the only important thing. That's why I think baseball is looking at eventually the way we see it now as an RIP. I think it's gone, and I don't think they care. So, but outside of all this, go ahead.
No, I was going to say to another point, and we go off on a little bit of tangent. It's also about the leagues are very much more also controlling the message, right? They're limiting access. The NBA, I'm not sure on the specifics of the policy, but I think that they're going to seriously limit interaction in the pregame locker room, all that, and they're using COVID as the excuse to
COVID has changed everything now
up.
because as far as a reporter is concerned, we don't have to give you access anymore. We can just put a couple of guys and a couple of gals in front of the monitors and hear you do it the day before or the day of. And not only that, post game, we don't need you in post game anymore. All we do is just put it up and you sit there and there's no interaction. That's why the players don't care anymore. There's none of that camaraderie.
No, they don't care. we care, nobody else cares, and the NFL gets it. They can control the message. So now you've got what we're seeing is that disconnect on different levels with fans, with the media, and they can control. I mean, the NFL can do it, the NBA can do it. Baseball is going to be in trouble because they just, for the reasons that we've talked about, it just doesn't resonate as much. I do have to share a story when we talk about fan access, and Sam's right about that whole. It felt like with that thing that they have, the fan zone thing, where they have the plexiglass, it feels that you're at the zoo. But back in the day when there was that access, I think it was Rusty Wallace was talking to Mark Martin, and I was happened in the garage area, and some fan was kind of pestering Rusty for an autograph. He goes, "Hey Rusty, hey Rusty," and he just kept screaming, "Hey Rusty, hey Rusty." And finally, Wallace had enough, turned to the guy and said, "Can't you see we're talking racing?" And he was just like, "Leave me alone." I just died. But anyway, I digress. But those were the good old days. They're not coming back.
Before we get out of here,
Yeah, but I mean,
go ahead,
really,
Sam.
you can't count really Rusty as an ambassador of the sport. I mean, he was always a jerk. You know, come on.
Well, look, that's like when I was covering the sport and I was around Tony Stewart in his heyday. Tony Stewart would walk through and everybody wanted to get Tony's autograph. And Tony's walking and he's got three people trailing him who are a part of his team. And granted, when you are trying to do your job and you've got people shoving pens and helmets and jerseys into your face, it's out of control at that point. Tony said to one guy, he said, "Hey, fuck off, man! I'm trying to work." And he just kept walking into the press center. But there's another conversation to be had here about the overzealousness of fans, and when fans had to have everything signed. And this goes long story here, but it's worth it. Where this all started with fans who became memorabilia addicts, who said, "I want to get this person or this athlete's name on something because one day it's going to be worth a lot of money, Junior." And then they're going to take them and have 10 things signed, and they're going to put them right up on eBay, and they're going to sell them. And the players finally decided, that's it, I'm done. I'm not going to be a reason for you guys to make money off me. I'll sell my own products, so I'm not going to sign anything anymore. That's gone away to where you can't do that. But that's another story for another time. Before we get out of here, George Diaz last night, Sam, was at the Eagles concert in Orlando. Now, of course, we can't play any Eagles music here because ASCAP, BMI, and the Eagles would sue me in about 3 seconds if I played 2 chords of music or showed anything from the concert. But talking about the Eagles, Sam, I'm going to get you on this as well because George is that huge Eagles fan. He loves them. George, they're 50 years old. I mean, and you've still got Don Henley out there. I mean, we don't have any of this great music anymore. But is it worth going to see a guy after 50 years?
I mean, to me, as I posted, they're the soundtrack of my youth, the soundtrack of my life. I just love the Eagles. Yeah, and they're celebrating the 50-year band anniversary. Of course, not everybody's around. If you last that long, you're going to get some breakups. Unfortunately, the death of Glenn Fry in 2016. But they, for 3 hours, 27 songs, including the entire Hotel California album, which, by the way, they broke up at the end of the 4th song or so when you have to flip the album over. They actually had a turntable there and they had a lady come over and flip the album over. And that was priceless. They also had the orchestra. I think that it's music that whatever generation, it's that music that you grow up with. It's the timeless
Agreed.
music that connects you to all these different moments in your life. And that's priceless.
Life in the Fast Lane is still one of my favorites. Sam, what's the soundtrack to your life that you go see in concert and you can think and you can relive it?
It was interesting to me. I happened to be in Orlando when the Hell Freezes Over tour was in Orlando, and it was an event. And I don't know that you see that anymore. We went to see James Taylor and Jackson Browne a couple of weeks ago here at the arena.
Wow.
And there were probably 12,000 people there, and everybody was my age. I mean, it's like James Taylor and Jackson Browne. At first of all, Jackson Browne was unrecognizable, and James Taylor can still play and sing, and it was just phenomenal to watch him as perform as a musician. But I'm sure if Sinatra were alive and he showed up, everybody would be 50 and older. But maybe, that music is timeless enough. But you're right. You work on the soundtrack of your life, and that's what you listen to. It's what makes you feel good. That's how you're going to relate to the people around you, and hopefully, you're passing some of that on to your children.
See, me, I'm transported by two artists, and Bob Seger is the soundtrack of my youth because
Hmm.
I still recall those magnificent concerts and Turn the Page as being one of the more transcendent music pieces where you just walk into it and I got lost. And then it's Springsteen. And Springsteen, I was there as a kid from the Northeast and actually having been at the Stone Pony and seen that. I mean, I listen to his words now, and it's when I hear Born to Run, I know where I was. When I hear Turn the Page, I know. When I hear Ramblin' Gambler Man, I know where I was. And that's I I don't. Boy, I tell you, here we go. I'm going to get on the lawn. I don't see any of the current artists to where in 50 years we're going to be saying, wow, I got to see her. I got to see them. Are we really going to be that excited about Lady Gaga, who is a brilliant performer? But are we really going to be that excited in 50 years to watch her perform again? I'm not so sure.
Somewhere
No.
in the
Yeah,
spotlight, you're a million miles away. Every ounce of energy, try to give away.
The lawyers are
yeah,
tuning
that's
up right now because Kavaris just spit out the music, and there's going to be a trademark issue. Somebody's going to say you can't do that.
yeah.
But
We just lost
15,
all the
you can play under
millennials on the
15.
podcast. By the way, good job, Ed.
I don't care. I mean, this is the kind of
No,
stuff that
they
No,
don't.
no. I went to a Jackson Brown concert, and he didn't play the loadout. How can he not play the loadout?
how.
Come on. I mean, that's like, you can't do that at your concert. You can't. That's what your fan. Sure, you can play some new music, and you can, play with James Taylor, but you got to play the loadout at some point.
What do you do?
I mean,
Make a whole concert on Doctor My Eyes? Come on, it's nice, but if you don't play the loadout, but let's be
I
honest, if you're going
understand
to
you
play
got a
the
lot of
loadout,
hits.
you have to also play Stay. You have to you cannot play the loadout without playing Stay. Are we
Yeah.
agreed on that?
Well, of course.
That's
And
true.
by
I
the
was
way,
at that
James
show
Taylor,
as
did he
well,
play Fire-
Sam.
Did he play Fire and Rain? Yes, he did. Did he play Going to Carolina? Yes, he did. He did some new stuff. He did some stuff with his son. But I sat there and I said, "No, you got to be kidding me! Jackson Brown's going to play a whole concert and not play the loadout. Come on."
That would be like
Get on.
going to
Yeah.
a Seeger concert and not playing Ramblin' Gambling Man or Catmandu. So there you go. Or
Right.
Springsteen not playing Born to Run, which is the same thing.
Yeah.
So, but is
Well,
there
Bruce is. I'm a big Springsteen fan as well, and now this is probably going to be the last run for him, I would think.
Springsteen? I think
at
so.
his age, and so for that band. So I'm definitely going to get on the road and see those guys a few times. Hopefully, when they get out. But
See,
I've been
that's
fortunate
wait a
to
minute.
see
See, that's the
him,
next thing.
2020.
Paul McCartney's out there doing a tour right now, and the tickets in some areas are $6,000 a seat.
Yeah, it's insane.
Okay, I won't go. I saw McCartney a long time ago, and I heard him about 7, 8 years ago, and his voice is shot. He does not have the timbre in his voice anymore. It doesn't sound like Paul McCartney to me. So I'm not going to pay $6,000 to see him. But I will tell you this much: when Springsteen goes on the final
I
tour,
will say that.
go ahead.
No, I was just sitting in a bar in New Orleans for the Super Bowl one night. There's a surprise. And McCartney walked in the door and walked behind me. And somebody sitting at the bar turned around and went, "Hey, Paul." And he just kind of turned around and said, "Hey, guys, how y'all doing?" And he stopped for a second, waved. And everybody was like, "Hey, Paul, good to see you." And he walked into some private room. But it was that. He's one of the most famous people, certainly one of the most famous musicians of
On the
last
planet.
100 years. But that was that common touch that you really didn't expect. I was like, wait a minute, that was Paul McCartney. So I don't know.
But
I wouldn't pay $6,000.
$6,000 a seat.
I
But
thought it-
I'm already starting to save up and figure in my mortgage because when Springsteen goes on his final tour, which I'm already told is going to be possibly a 3-year world tour that he will go on, figure that. Katie by the door, guys, I'm blowing everything. Last chance to see Springsteen. I don't know if I'll pay $6,000 a seat, but I'll figure out how to pay a little less and still get into that last concert. So there you go.
Well, Bruce doesn't charge as much for his seats.
No.
That may change now. But I usually go to the pit and take my chances. I pay about $150, $125 last go around. Things might change, but nothing like being in the pit at a Springsteen show.
I'm expecting to pay
especially
for Springsteen's final concert, even though he controls the tickets. I'm expecting to pay $300 a seat. I mean, and that's just for seats in the nosebleed section. I'll have to do it. So, all right. We did. So we got here. We did absolutely nothing that we planned on doing, but we had a better conversation because it's all about fans and what's going these days. And Joey missed it. So, Joey, we're going to send you a tape of this, and you're going to have to come in and George work on your Hawaiian shirt if we do this on Fridays. Come on, man. I mean, come on, brother. You got, come on, represent. If you want to get a hold of George Diaz and give him a whole lot of grief for not wearing his Hawaiian shirt this week, you can please do that. Facebook and Instagram, George Diaz 758. Twitter is @GeorgeDiaz. And of course, Sam Kavares, you want to get a hold of Big Sam. Facebook and Twitter @Sam Kavares. Instagram @Sam Kavares Jr. And the web is samsportsline.com. Go ahead. You were going to say?
I just realized a lot of my stories start with I was sitting in a bar. So just I think maybe I
What's
need to
the
adjust.
point? Haven't we all? If we should, you could do a show one day. We could do this about just I was sitting in a bar, and maybe that should be the name of a podcast. I was sitting in a bar, and everything has to be where you've seen somebody, met somebody, or had conversations in bars. But how many conversations could we actually talk about without mentioning the person's name?
As the guy with who makes Horse Soldier bourbon, and I met him here a few weeks ago. Those guys who were the first 12 to go into Afghanistan, and I said, "How'd this start?" And we were just sitting there, and he goes, "Well, we were sitting around drinking." He goes, "Because not a lot of great ideas come out when guys are sitting around eating a salad." So I know that's a little pitter-patter line he's got going, but absolutely true.
I would agree with him completely. We will do that. And ladies and gentlemen, look for the podcast. I was sitting in a bar, which oh, and I got to tell you, just real quick, I have a moment where I have been granted an interview, and I'm going to have it soon on The Man in the Arena. Long story, real short. I'm going to finally interview Mark Farner. Now,
wow.
Okay, Sam knows. George, do you know who Mark Farner is? George, do you know who Mark Farner is?
Well, I mean, Grand Funk Railroad, obviously.
The lead singer for Grand Funk Railroad. The very first
saw him at a private party in New Orleans at the Super Bowl once.
See, to me, it was the
had
first
those leather things around his arms.
Yeah, that's the first hard rocker that I ever had. I mean, it's a long story.
He had those leather things around his arms. I was like,
long story short, but we used to vacation from New York to Florida. My parents stopped in Stuckey's. I had a brand new cassette recorder that I was given, and I had no tapes to listen to. I went into the Stuckey's, and there behind glass were the cassettes, and I immediately reached for the double album set because, of course, I wanted the most expensive thing, the double cassette set for Woodstock. My mother saw that, and she said, "Your aunt has told me what's on that. You can't have that." So I reached for the other one, which was right next to it, was, for whatever reason, it wasn't an alphabetical, Grand Funk Railroad live album. That was it. I was sold. So the weird reasons we get stuck on certain music. So we'll do that as well. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Have a great weekend. We'll do it again. And George will wear a Hawaiian shirt next time, or he will be put on double secret probation, which will be easy indeed. Reminder again, don't forget to check us out, TalkSportsNetwork.com. You can see all the shows. Also, on podcasts now, iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, iHeart, Odyssey, Pandora. You can see, just check out, go for The Man in the Arena. Find it there, and you'll find all the shows there, all of these shows and all the rest. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great weekend. For Sam, for George, and for Joey, who's missing, I'm Ed Berliner. Rock on, true believers. See ya!